tune you just heard on the banjo was Frosty Morn. The original owner of this boat was an avid banjo player, and that was one of his favourite tunes, hence the name of the boat. To begin with here, we're going to start with lofting. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. There's a lot of good publications available that will help you to understand how it works and the importance of it. The lofting for this boat is done on 1/2-inch plywood, which has been painted white as you see. And it is important to spend as much time as possible at this stage, save you a lot of time and headaches further down the road. Basically the lofting is just transferring the lines from the drawings that come from your designer onto the floor in full size. Here I'm working on the half breadths. This of course will be used to fabricate the bulkheads and the temporary station molds. These lines will be drawing to inside the planking and outside the planking. I like to use different colours for the different lines. It gets to be a lot of lines on this floor, and they all have to mean something to you, so it makes it a lot easier if they're done in different colours. Here we have a bulkhead that's already been lifted off the lines. I'll show you how to do that later. Right now what I'm doing is preparing to make the frames that are attached to the bulkhead. These are just temporary blocks that are screwed on the floor to facilitate the bending of the laminates. I use West System epoxy, and this is mixed with some thickening agents, micro balloons and silica powder. I like to use a little micro balloons when I'm working with mahogany, as it makes the resin the same colour. If you don't like messy hands, get somebody else to do this for you. I believe they're 1/4 inch laminates that I used there. There's about 5 of them. Makes it quite easy to bend. There's the frame, all clamped up. Leave it to dry overnight. The other end of my shop we see the stem, which has also been laminated up. Pretty crude looking form there, but whatever works. Now we have the frame ready for cleaning up. I'm going to use the power plane here initially. Now we'll finish it off with a nice sharp jack plane. Get everything nice and even. It's important that everything is fairly straight on at least one end here. It means the bulkhead will be square and perpendicular. twisted. This, of course, is all self-explanatory, but it may be necessary to leave the frame protruding a little bit from the plywood, depending on where the bulkhead is situated in the boat. There you can see the transom marked out on the plywood. So that's well clamped down, and leave that to set. Now we're going to make the temporary molds. In order to do that, we have to lift the lines off the floor. This is, of course, the old and tried and true way of doing it. It's just flathead nails with the heads drove into the line, about 4-inch intervals. Now would be a good time to play that banjo music again. Do a little dance here. There we have a nice mirror image of what's on the lofting floor. Use a batten now to fare it all in. As you can see, you need to have good knees for this job. Now it's important to transfer all the necessary lines from the lofting floor onto these temporary station molds. We'll use them for references later. So of course, once we've made one side, we just duplicate it on the other side. These boards are placed on one of the water lines. Doesn't matter which one, whichever one is convenient, as long as they're all the same. We'll use them to line everything up on the form later. Sorry about the video quality here, but this was videotaped in 1984 with an old Betamax camera, and that's as good as the technology was then. always encouraging to see the forms start to stack up against the shop wall. Shows we're making progress. Just number those forms, each individual part, so as when you take it apart later, you'll be able to have all the pieces. Everybody has their own way of doing this. This is how I like to set up the form. It's a convenient way of doing it when you're single-handed. Makes everything a lot easier. These 2x4s are all set at the stations. It's important that they're perpendicular from. Just slide in the forms and bulkheads. Everything is already level, so all we have to do is line up the center lines. Clamp them temporarily in place till we put a couple of screws in. That'll hold everything together. Same applies with the station molds. Just line up the center line. There you can see the transom set in place. I always like to put one more station mold behind the transom. Keeps everything fair. Had the frame clamped onto the transom to get the shape. Now I'm going to take it off and clean it up before I fix it permanently. Time to shape the stem. Started off again with the power plane. That's been the greatest boon to wooden boat building. Saves a lot of drudgery and hard work. But of course we still have to finish it off with the hand plane. Make sure everything is fair. This is for the keelson or the backbone, whatever you want to call it. Scarf different pieces together, and of course stagger the scarves when we glue it all up. There it is in place. Certainly need lots of clamps. Now I've removed it. Do the final shaping before putting it in place. Time to put the shear clamps in. Again, these are laminated up out of 3 pieces. I think in this boat I used mahogany on the outsides with Sitka spruce in the middle, give a nice effect. Also kept the weight down a little bit. I've rigged up wooden clamps that have been fastened onto the forms. You can see them there. Pieces for the shear clamp just drop down into them. Makes it a lot easier when you're working single-handed. This clamp, of course, will be let in to the forms and station molds at another time, but for now it's good enough just to clamp it to the sides to get the proper twist and shape. Drive some wedges in there. Do some final fairing throughout the boat. This is a handy little tool that I made. It's just a piece of 3/4 inch plywood with a Stanley Sureform blade attached to it. Some holes there to let the shavings out. It's really handy for doing final fairing. So that's just about ready for planking, which will be covered in the next section.